I certainly agree with one of the two Maniger brothers that created the famous Kansas psychiatric training grounds in Topeka. People make self-fulfilling prophecies. That's quite describing our species. If men find a situation as real, they are real in their consequences. Think about the people defining women as inferior to men in some times and culture, black being inferior to white in others, etc., etc. The example is that doesn't matter if it's deadly untrue. You know, believing it makes it true. Thomas underlined that the way people perceive a situation is the way they react to them, and not at the real situation, but at their perception of it. I remember once that I was traveling in London in the winter, and me and my wife found ourselves, and I was still with the winter coat, going to Seychelles for a vacation. And Club Med, the guy that brought us to our bungalow said that not to worry, that there are some snakes around here, but they're not poisonous. And I asked myself, we were not happy about that. I said, how are you? They're all non-poisonous. Anyhow, threw my suit on a chair and jumped on a swimming suit and went to, finally, to take a swim. Coming back to my bungalow, I see the window open and the sun on the floor, and I saw a snake. Immediately, I had a faster heartbeat. And I didn't know, you know, I was in my swimming trunks. There is something that I could deal with this, maybe non-poisonous snake. And my heart was racing. I said to my wife, you know, stay behind me. But then I see that this snake is quite idle. Maybe I got a lazy snake. I look better. It's not a snake at all. It's my, leather belt that fell from my pants and went down. But my heart said, "It's a snake. It's a snake." If I could have been dying of a heart attack if I was weaker from a vicious belt, but I could die just the same because my interpretation of reality, my decoding, what as a psychology I call my construction of reality, makes it real. It doesn't matter if women obviously are equal to men. If I consider it non-equal, that becomes so. You know, if in the past we had so many stories about two young people falling in love, but they cannot fulfill their dream because they are from two different social classes, and that is taboo. So that is stupid, but it's real. So people's behavior is determined in part by their perception and the meaning they give to the situation they are in, rather than the situation in themselves. Once people convince themselves that a situation really has a certain meaning, regardless of whatever it does or not, they would take very real consequences because they act even if it's not true. So this is really the point that other people have said in different words. We, as a species, do not live in reality. If we think we live in reality, that makes us blind and impotent to deal with a lot of realities. People live in their social and individual construction of what they call reality. And that varies for society and culture in time, and also for people. on obvious level, I believe in Santa Claus, and until I caught one night my parents that were putting Santa Claus present on the Christmas tree, and then I have changed certainly my belief system than when I was a kid of 6 in many other regards. So, reality, the construction of reality, continuously change, and some society, it changes very fast. Usually they are democratic society. In authoritarian dictatorship, things do not change unless the dictatorship disintegrate. Also, religion are another example, or churches, so to speak, of any denomination, to keep the construction of reality as fixed as possible for different reasons that we will see later. Of course, the way I construe my experience is definitely influenced by the society and the culture around me, and my family of origin, my peers, and the environment in which I live. I remember I'm a psychologist and a psychotherapist, but also I'm a president of an institute that trains medical doctors and clinical psychologists to become psychotherapists. We train many other people, managers, teachers, and all that. I remember one of our students at the institute, not only Italy but Switzerland, was from Belgium. But in Belgium, they speak French, but and they live like Belgians, and they eat the Belgian waffles and French fries and all that, that. They have a lot of rain. Well, his father was sent by his firm to Congo, Belgium, which is a Belgian colony, and they had a lot of things to do. So this kid grew up mostly taken care by a male servant that grew very fond. And he was, clearly having 2 languages, and he learned the local pidgin language, and he would share with us one way for him to get emotionally stable, emotionally grounded, was something that his, tutor, African tutor had taught him to hug a tree and feel the life pulsating in the tree, to feel the roots sucking nourishment from the Mother Earth and the leaves moving in the wind and touching the sky and spiritual notion. And he was so moving that although we were not at all experiencing that kind of construction reality, he could communicate with us. But in him, 2 construction of reality were alive and operating, and often they gave him some problem, because when he came back in Belgium as a psychologist, his colleagues thought that this guy is trained, bordering on the insane. So, social, cultural, and personal construct are the ways communities and individuals construe their experience. And this is done not only at the cognitive level, as some, like the communists, had led to believe, but there are emotional patterns, and these actually are in common with several forms of life, and certainly the mammalian, is a radar with color of, fear, flight, and attack, and our personal and social construction of reality interacts all the time. I will speak later what happened to us since the age of connectivity and continuous, input from many cultures, many reality, many different ways individual of construing experience, and how we dealing, in my opinion, not that great, with the age of connectivity, we become often a lot of people, especially, overwhelmed. So, reality, this is the seminal book of 1966, Virgin and Lutzman, Reality as a Social Construction, of course, is largely shaped, largely because the fact that there is Earth and it rotates around the sun and there are sun rays and there are earthquakes, that's not the social construction, you know, it's the physical reality we live in. And believe it, we know or not, but it's affecting us, radioactivity and all that, genetics and all that. But our reality in which we live is largely shaped by language, you know, in Italian. And when I went to study and work in the United States, I discovered that in my language, there are some words that don't have translation from English to Italian and vice versa, because that words are not describing a reality existing in Italy. So they give us a role and they tell us how to relate to ourselves, others, and the world. And they reward us or punish us if we don't respect the role designed by our power culture. Of course, at the social level, that is even more evident because the society promotes actively through teaching, through imposition of social roles, norms, law, and most significant, power and wealth distribution. Certain people are excluded from the goodies because they are not being or behaving correctly for society. So, the consequences of the social, psychological, and spiritual impact on the structuring of social and individual experience varies. Otherwise, there wouldn't be ever any change. In every society, there are the people that conform, and those that don't actually became the so-called revolutionary that make the society progress through phases of change, quietly or vocal. But all this, I think, we share already. I want to point out more something really that academy, everybody wanting to promote a better future or mitigate, as some of us are hoping at least, the destruction of life forms or even variability of life on Earth. Well, we have to be aware that social individual construction can be effective or destructive. In what? Well, at the social individual level, in promoting health, well-being, democracy, equal opportunities, sustainability, resilience, creativity. But a construction, social or individual, can also be the opposite and be promoting illness, dysfunctionality, pollution. People that are in the mental health know that very well. People that are in politics should know very well. Sometimes they look like the gods notice. And what that is depending on? Well, of the type of construct, and most of all, something that I always speak everywhere I go, values. Why I speak about values? I'm a value freak? No, I think I speak about value because value are the most unspoken, used to be when I was a little kid in the Catholic action, sex, I couldn't speak about sex. Value today, even in science, are pretty scarce, or power lines. So, beliefs, social norm, have either life-affirming value are tolerant, allow for difference, and so prosperity coming from it, and others are so scared, so threatened by anything that is not exactly how it should be, that they try to eliminate, eradicate any difference and variance. Look at Nazi Germany. Look at the Marxist-Leninist dictatorship all over the world. Even party leaders were purged by Stalin because they were not winking with the right eye. Even nowadays, we open television or the newspaper, and we see that people in the church are praying and they're bombed by other people that are very religious, and they think that they want to eradicate, to glorify their God, the other people that, pray to a competing God. I also want to underline that I'm not a behavior modification person. I do not believe that we are like plaster and we are just shaped and modified automatically by exterior influence. Certainly we are impacted, but the impact is very different. Like, of course, parents impact me very much, my parents, but I come from a very anxious family. My parents were both very anxious. So, did their anxiety impact me? Of course. But that doesn't make me automatically an anxious person. As a matter of fact, I'm not. I'm quite the opposite, which means that I've been impacted by them. I reacted in the opposite way. So, there is an impact, but it's not a copycat impact. As a matter of fact, I still remember, he's a philosopher, he never worries about anything. And that impacted me, and that thanks to my anxious parents. I think I've been an adventurous guy, traveling around the world, learning much more than I could stay put in Florence. Not that that's easy, but a little boring if you stay the whole life. Okay, let's give you some example. The social level, democracy, plurality, and value and power lines are made explicit and transparent. At the individual level, an example can be that the person becomes aware of the social construction and of the implicit value of power distribution. I am privileged in this because as a psychotherapist, I have a vast experience with different clientele in different countries. And it's amazing and really emotional to see how people, little by little, realize how they've been construing automatically their experience. And they say, oh, I still hear the voice of my father telling me. I still hear it, and they are 65, and so they start to become aware that they're not living in reality, but that construction of reality. And so that reality can be changed. They did believe it then, but it's not tragedy if it's obsolete for them now, and not betraying what they thought if they could not behave accordingly to the rules that parents, church, and school, elementary school teachers were providing for them as recipe for the right way to live. I was trying to say before with our friend, well, this unfortunately is even less spoken about. Science is a social construction. If real science hear the word truth, then knows that we're not talking about science. Science is a method of knowing, a methodology to verify that we've done some serious work to put some hypotheses, testing them, doing research, and have this hypothesis being confirmed. But we are far from knowing the truth. In science, the truth is unknowable. The truth is for spiritual leaders, is metaphysics. The truth is never science. But sometimes you seem to him, did you forget that science is not the truth? I make some example that I know very well because it's my field. All the different approaches or paradigms of psychotherapy, but doesn't matter psychotherapy, it's the same of helping profession. So any pedagogy in the field of education, social work, whatever, even management theory, they're based on a different vision of human nature. And it's interesting because we get to study organizational development or pedagogy, but we do not make explicit, and even in psychotherapy, many approaches don't make explicit. So basically, you are working as a professional, but you don't even know what kind of value you are applying necessarily if you didn't really investigate it yourself. Because at the university, they don't teach you. It's even worse. If you want to be a good professional, you have to not look at the book, but make yours, interiorize that paradigm, right? And so if that paradigm has values that are contrasting with your own value, you create yourself neurosis. So you split inside yourself because you actually have made something that is incompatible and you have an inner conflict and you don't know from where it comes. So from a different a view of human nature descend the view of health and illness. And the different process, we call it pathology, mental health, that creates disease, dysfunctional, and also the way that we recuperate functionality, the theory of therapy. Well, you don't need to go into this complicated reasoning, because if we were talking here and saying, okay, today, no, you're mistaken. I'm here to give a lecture about the cultivation of potatoes, or you prefer about the lemons or rabbits. Well, if you don't know anything and I'm a professor, distant professor, I have to show you what is the theory of the nature of the potato or of the lemons or rabbits. Because from that vision, then I would be able to decipher the problems that a lemon tree or a potato or a rabbit can encounter. The ethiopathology of the potato, the rabbit, of the lemon tree. And then I would go directly to the theory of therapy of the potato blight, of the rabbit whatever, and so forth. You follow me? Anything, any system we want to impact, we have to get a vision of what it is, a map. But for human being, it's very, very, very significant that the vision of human being is always very political, because it's imbued with value. In the past, we heard the things like every woman has a penis end. There is a little value on that. A great scientist created an IQ that was measuring white as more intelligent. So, black and the minority were, of course, constitutionally, genetically inferior. We have said so many stupid things and have called it science because we've been blind to make the implicit explicit and the value visible and discussable. What I'm saying here now does have value, you guess. Another example, not only there are values on human beings, that they value everywhere. Think about nature, We go from saying nature is being created for use of human beings. Do whatever you want because you have the ownership. And we did that happily. Now, I really appreciate Pope Francis. And I had, for the World Academy, a discussion with the high officer, Cardinal in Vatican, because we really appreciate anybody, for whatever religion, that think along the line of being responsible to Mother Earth. And so there is enormous value how we consider every living entity, every living creature. In some religion, Jansenist, they even have care not to squish little insects when they walk, or interesting, but very respectful. Anyhow, in every aspect, and also so psychotherapy, the value and the level of powers are not explicit. And for example, the expert, that could be the medical doctor, that just diagnose you and prescribe the cure. Well, there is a lot of political value there. They say that basically you're a lay person and you are an imbecile. You cannot be somebody with whom to waste time. I have experience on my skin, and not in Italy. We were waiting for a child, and then the doctor was so, just 2 minutes. Lady, sorry, no more hopes. I have had some of my friends going under surgery, cancer, and all that. Half a minute. Well, that's really something wrong there. If, you see your patient, and it's not a cancer, is not a dysfunctional organ, is a person with hope and fears. And the research says that when the medicine is central on the person, you have better compliance. People actually have better results and stay less days in the hospital than surgery. So, for example, I belong to a approach that is created by Carol, and it's called the person-centered approach, because we think, and we have ample scientific proof, that if you don't treat people as persons, you are risking to be not willing, but part of the problem instead of the solution. And we know, for example, in our region, that people, like any living organism, has, by evolution, genetically, all the capacity for self-actualization. And that the therapist should not be a semi-god that interprets and prescribes, but help the person to reconnect to his inner sextant, his inner compass, to again rehabilitate himself once has discarded all the garbage of constructs that are actually enemies fighting against his right to be, right to love and to be loved, no matter what color, sexual orientation, wealth in the family, and so forth. Well, people can progress very much because we are the species that make self-fulfilling prophecies, and this science show it also in psychotherapy. But with traumatized people, this is very tough, much more difficult. The neuroscience show us that they have embedded the trauma, so they live the trauma over and over again. They've been really burned, and they're still closed down and react as the threat is still here and now. So in a sense, if I can take that example that is dramatic, what really helps traumatize people that have not received the needed safe port, safe ground by their parental agency, the acceptance, the understanding of other human beings? As the trauma was, instead of being welcomed and accepted, it has to be repeatedly, offered a welcoming, respectful, empathic environment. So those deep burrows of trauma are substituted with capacity to, after being protected, be able to protect themselves. After being so much respected to be able to respect themselves. After to be so much understood to understand themselves and others. So this seems really simplistic, but it's actually pretty tough. It's not. Actually, we see the problems that we have. Otherwise, why? We are, fantastic. We're going to the moon. We have so much power. With my iPhone, I can be even here contacted by everybody around the world, even answer some mail when Gary is not looking at me. But unfortunately, in the age of hyper-connection, the paradox is that people are suffering from loneliness and disconnection. Dramatic. So, to end up, in the age of globalization and growing complexity, in order to meet the challenge of our present and future in new and effective ways, I really like what Gary said at the beginning. Totally subscribe to that. We're not doing so well because our knowledge is actually blinding us. It's not effective knowledge. It's what I call ignorant knowledge, mechanicistic, square by square. Everything is connected, and we still go square by square. So we need to foster a new sociological literacy. We are illiterate. We don't know how to read reality. A social psychological compass, I call it. And needed a holistic, systemic way of being in a relationship with ourselves, with others, and the play. This is required, nothing less, to navigate the rippling currents of change. So, our politicians, the decision makers, they are still ignorant of all this, unless they think how we can manipulate the masses, instead of empowering the masses, of making them more responsible, more resilient, more entrepreneurship, able to do real wealth, which is sustainable prosperity. The construction of experience, if taken for real reality, is very dangerous and can produce a really bad boomerang effect. As a matter of fact, the history is also the history of lost civilization that lost their compass and mistakenly thought that their interpretation of reality was reality. Wrong. Think the way we use wrong metrics to measure wealth, like the national product. Funny. Think about how we create a new order, drawing neat guy, borders of nature. Look at Sudan, how neat on paper. And there are people there, there are plants, there are rivers. So, sociology and psychology of knowledge, of power and governance need to be employed along the history and philosophy of science for a better understanding of how we are relating to ourselves, others, and the world. So we need to create what is called generative theories. You have all the bibliography at the end. A challenge the common assumption and open up new possibilities. And be aware of the consequence of what is called deficit discourses. You know, we construe the world always about problems. Why don't we talk also about the successful project, the people that daily contribute to the solution instead of the problems? We need heroes, role models. We are not impotent. We are impotent if we decide construe ourselves as impotent. So, we need to facilitate the construction of awareness in everybody, at every level, at every individual, organization, governments. So I hope that all the people willing can also be in contact, unite, and synergize to construe together, not top-down, but together, people-centered, person-centered, socially and individual, sustainable narratives with explicit value and power differentials. And good luck to us all.